AC Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And as the spirits work on this journey, oftentimes I wind up acquiring music from certain people, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to it, and somebody else is on the record that is completely inspiring in their playing and their point of view and their attack. And it turns out that the album itself makes an indelible mark on me, and then through the music, the timeless spirits of cats that have long left this planet, like James Moody and Milt Jackson and Dizzy Gillespie, encourage me in a sort of a rhythmic, vibrational, spiritual sense to go and track these cats down, not just for legacy, but for promotion, knowing that long after we've left this planet, these cats, these musicians, these instrumentalists will continue to inspire young cats to try to be themselves and hopefully take on a renaissance of new music. Ed Cherry, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much. It's nice to be here with you.
It's such an honor to talk to you, man. Can you just talk from your own point of view as when you were younger about if you were aware of when the guitar kind of fundamentally switched from a rhythm instrument like a Freddie Green style to, became more of, look what it's become today in terms of just the ultimate lead instrument. Were you part of that sort of transition?
Well, to be honest with you, Jake, when I was young and first started playing the guitar, I was totally into rhythm guitar, but it was in a funk bag.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, totally, yeah.
Like in the late '60s, when I started playing the guitar, James Brown and late '60s, Kool and the Gang and bands like this totally had happening rhythm guitarists, and I was totally zoned into that. So yeah, it's not exactly Freddie Green, but it's still a happening.
No, it wasn't. You weren't. It's just interesting because I just feel like I guess maybe the bigger question, more appropriate question for younger cats is, how did developing that foundation of deep rhythm help your improvisational chops and maybe help you find your own individual voice?
Well, I was always into the drums. It's just, for me personally, I was always into like drums, listening to good drummers. And,
yeah, dude.
And rhythm was my thing. I enjoyed, the static rhythms and the syncopated beats and all of that. And I just tried to do that on the guitar in terms of playing rhythm guitar. And like I said, James Brown, what was his name? Jimmy Nolan, I guess. He was the cat back in the late 60s.
Wow, that's a pre-Jabbo, pre-Clyde Stubblefield, right?
Yeah. With that rhythm guitar, he like showed me the way, and he was one of them. And so I just took those drum beats that I had in my head and heard on the radio and just tried to apply it to my own thing. It was just like a natural thing for me to think that way.
That's the thing to me that is so seductive about some of the music that I've heard you on, and like why have we gotten so far away from the fundamentals of, there are younger cats today can, it's like riffology, they can go to the academy, they can play ridiculous technique and chops, but they have no time. They can't keep time. And all the cats that I love, it was all
a new day. I can't answer that question. It's a new day. The cats are listening to different stuff, but when I was like 18, 19, 20, I was totally into a drum thing. That was like rhythm was like first and foremost. With me and a lot of my friends. But the cats are listening to different stuff now. They're into super chops, and a lot of it has nothing to do with playing rhythm guitar. Or listening to old James Brown patterns. They're just not. They're listening to some other stuff, and I don't get it. I don't really understand why it's gone away from swinging and rhythm and deep pocket, but that's what's happening now. So hey.
Well, so let me.
Do what I do.
No, I dig. I dig. I mean, I wonder about like.
Yeah.
I mean, were you going to see like Sonny Murray, or were you going to the Apollo, or going to see funk music, or like were you enjoying like the heavy the jazz cats that were sort of mixing in all the different? I mean, even Tony. Yeah.
I was going to see all of those guys.
Yeah.
I was going to see like James Brown. I'd go to see Oliver Lake.
I love it, man.
And I mention Oliver because I'm from New Haven, Connecticut,
mm-hmm.
and at one point he was living in New Haven, and he kept a scene happening in New Haven, and his drummer, Theron Akloff, had come from Detroit to live with Oliver, I guess, for a while in New Haven. And Theron and I became friends, and we ended up playing together often in jazz groups and funk groups, So, but yeah, to your original question, yeah, I would go see bands like, maybe not exactly Sonny Murray, but those types of bands. And I would go see, whoever else was cool in the gang. I'd go see Jimi Hendrix or,
Oh yeah, you had a huge. I mean, you were. So how old were you in '68? I mean, that's just the most amazing thing ever, dude.
Well, I was like, what, 15?
Oh my God, that is insane, dude.
And I was fortunate that my parents let me go to these concerts. They're like a lot of parents who try to lock their kids down, especially back then.
Sure.
To try to keep the kids at home or what. But my parents were totally open. They didn't stop me from playing music. I could invite my musician friends over to the house. I could go see Jimi Hendrix and come home at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. I have to give them props because they didn't hinder my quest for music. Live.
Yeah, well, I remember. I mean, so many beautiful parents like John B. Williams, the great drummer. I mean, the great bass player. He grew up in right next door to Milt Jackson and Yonkers, or and the point is that he easily could have been in gangs, but the music was helping him as an outlet, and his parents, sort of. Fostered that. I guess, I'm always searching because I was born in '78. Every album, like after, like late '70s, except for Dizzy stuff, which was always just like so funky and crazy and simple, but so weird and funky. And I just wonder about if you could talk, even though I know you were just a teenager basically, but you look at jazz at one time, whatever that word means. I mean, it in the early part of the '60s, especially, was music of social consciousness. It was movement music. It was, if nothing else, it was just sheer and utter. Love supreme. You had all sorts of like incredible expansion of vocabulary. The bass took on a new role, and then all of a sudden, you had John F. Kennedy assassinated, Martin Luther King assassinated, Train died, and Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and then Malcolm eventually, and Malcolm X as well. And I wanted you to just talk about, like, you know, what it would be, like, what the music stood for. I mean, the Kool and the Gang stuff, like, those guys were insane because they could play funk and they could also stretch out and they had jazz chops, but I'm talking more like acoustic jazz, like the school of Moody and Dizzy. I mean, I know that they always wanted to have a good time, make people laugh, but I think part of the intoxicating thing for me was that it was movement music, especially for people of color. And I just wanted to know if you felt
Yeah.
that was accurate or not, because after that, I mean, Gary Bart said they murdered all of our heroes.
Yeah, well, there were groups who were politically active, and politically, what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, there were groups who were into that, and it came out in their music, like Bart's, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe Albert Eiler, people like that, Frank Lowe, The Last Poet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, what I'm thinking is that, like,
all of that music.
I mean, did your parent? I mean, in some way, maybe your parents wanted you to go get hip to this. Not that you were going to see Last Poets every night, but to be exposed and get educated. Because I feel like if you don't know where you came from, then it's very hard to go forward. You know.
Well, my parents didn't say, well, you should listen to this,
right?
You should do this,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But there was enough music in my home where I became I was inquisitive about where that stuff was coming from. I asked a lot of questions with my friends, but my parents, and my dad was a Charlie Parker fan, and he liked Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Barry Harris. So there was music in the home. And my mom, she liked more pop music, and I forget the name, but anyway, she liked the black pop music singers of the day.
Yeah, like Dionne Warwick or something like that. Yeah.
She liked all that stuff, and so there was music, and plus my friends in the neighborhood, some of them were musicians, and they had friends who were playing some of this acoustic jazz, and it was great black music, and it was all politically motivated, a lot of it, I mean, this is 1968, 69, so there was a lot of stuff happening politically, and it came out in the music in some circles. Mingus, of course. So, I was drawn to all of it,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just it to me it strikes me as like, today we're seeing all this. I mean, there was not that it wasn't a violent culture, but even you look back and like you look at certain movies or the way art is portrayed, and like if somebody got knocked down and they had their back to the other person, the person wouldn't shoot them in the back. I mean, they'd wait for them to turn around and fight. And now it's like, now you just get taken out. And I just feel like, so here's the thing. Did you know, so the late, great Joe Porcaro and Emil Richards and those cats, and they all came from Hartford, Connecticut. And they talked about Walter Bolden. Did you ever play with Walter?
No, I knew who he was.
And then there was a club, the club Sundown. I mean, that was more Hartford. I mean, what were the? Because I mean, when Steve Swallow,
I wasn't really around. The only time that I played with him in Hartford, really, it was like late '70s, mid '70s, when I finally got my first jazz gig playing with Jimmy McGriff, and he lived in Hartford, and that's really the only time I played in Hartford. Like Hartford and New Haven, it's like two different scenes completely.
No, dude, totally. No. First of all, okay, so I want to ask you this question: what is the difference, if you can talk about this for a guitar player, between the bass lines of somebody kicking pedals, someone like McGriff, who I believe did kick pedals quite a bit, versus an electric or upright bass player. How was that? You didn't have an electric player with McGriff, I assume.
No, he played left-hand bass, kicked the pedals. Yeah, it's just sound, feeling. But you have a good bass player and a good organ player, it's the same thing. And I'm saying, and the operative word is good, excellent. If you have an excellent organ player, excellent bass player, but it's really the sound, of course, the sound is different. And most people identified the organ with the church thing, so that was like people identified with that right away. So, but to me, it was no different. I mean, I worked with some great bass players, and the feeling was the same. If you get a good bass player, a good organ player, but yeah, it's just a sound to me. It's like personal preference. I don't really have one, but I like the organ, of course. I've done, a few recordings with organ, and I just like the feeling of the organ. It's not more than an acoustic bass and drums, but it's different. And,
totally. I was going to say I
don't really have a preference. I mean, if the cats can play, the feeling is the same for me.
Dude, listen. It's more. You know what it is like. That was yeah.
It's whether one night I'm feeling like, hey, I'm feeling like I want to go acoustic, and I'll hire a bass player.
Oh my God, dude, it's so great to talk to Ed.
If I'm feeling like I want to go with organ, then yeah, I go with the electric. But
so let me read this to you. I want to read this to you from my interview with the cat who was from New Haven, because I think you're spot on. There, every city was different. And this is from Steve Swallow. He said, "The musical conversation for me started before I moved to New York. I was going to school in New Haven, Connecticut. In the late 50s, there was a remarkably benign music scene going on in the ghetto of New Haven, Connecticut. The main street in the black ghetto was Dixwell Avenue, and it was lined with clubs.
Right.
Those clubs were filled with rhythm sections and organ trios. There was a community scene that flourished in all the cities, large and small, in the United States." Mm-hmm. So I know that you weren't around in the 50s, but can you talk about that scene by the time that you were old enough to start gigging?
Yeah, well, from what I remember, there was for jazz, it was mostly organ players. There were a couple of organ players who basically kept the scene alive. At least when I started hanging out in jam sessions and stuff, there were two organ player brothers, Bobby and Eddie Buster. They had moved to New Haven from Chicago.
Wow, I know that name, Eddie Busters. Yeah.
Yeah, Eddie Buster. Yeah, he recorded with Sonny Stitt.
Yeah, that's where I know it. Thank you.
And his brother Bobby also recorded with Sonny Stitt and Gene Ammons and those cats. But they left Chicago and they came to New Haven and they started a scene. And so it was organ trios and quartets. And that was really it. And then you had a lot of Yale students that would come in who were players, great players, like Anthony Davis, piano player.
Whoa.
Mark Elias, saxophone player, Dwight Andrews. These are all great musicians, and they kept the scene going as well with what they presented. So yeah, there was a scene, but the Dixwell Avenue scene was mostly organ players, organ groups.
And it's still fair to say. So I just want to be clear. Like, your parents would let you take Metro North to the city to see James Brown, or was he playing in New Haven?
No, I'd take Metro North, or if I had a friend that had a car, we'd drive into the city.
Totally. So, but I just want to know, like, from your point of view, like, how did you when the first time you took the chance to say I want? Did those cats, like Brian Jackson, Gil Scott Heron's partner, would go down to the Bowery and George Coleman and Reggie Workman were playing, and he'd go up on a tune that he knew he could handle. He wasn't going to go up on some burning tune to play. Was there sort of a farm system, so to speak? How did you get into playing with the older cats?
You're talking about in New York or
no, New Haven? I mean, primarily just the start of yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just jam sessions. The older cats ran the session, and the younger cats would sit in. And I remember the first jam session I went to. I had my Fender Strat, and I'm going up. Because I'm coming out of rhythm and blues.
Oh, I love it. No, I love it, dude.
So anyway, they let me sit in and just play a blues or something like that. Nothing too complicated, and they just let me sit in, and they would let me come back every week. Yeah, it was pretty chill. I mean, they didn't, they weren't like, treating young musicians badly. They'd let you sit in, and if you sounded bad, you knew it. You just
right, and you'd have to go home and wallow and then figure it out.
You have to go home and figure out what you did and come back, and they'd let you come back. Now I've heard of sessions where cats were like terrible, like cussed them off the stage or vibed them in some way, but fortunately, in New Haven at that time, it was totally cool. They were very helpful, very friendly.
I was going to say, like, what?
I was fortunate.
I mean, looking back on it, did you? I'm not sure when you moved to New York City, but I mean, if you go back to those cities today, those areas are pretty decimated, and I mean, it's just
there's no real music scene in New Haven.
When did you go back for the first time and be like, I don't recognize this? I mean, do you think the music? I think the better question is, do you think the music held? Was it all? Because I mean, the Fillmore district in San Francisco was Charles Sullivan. Sounds to me like this was an all-black commercial district in New Haven. I mean, at a certain point, when did you realize that whole essence was gone? Because by the late 60s, you're saying it was pretty much still there. The older cats kind of kept it alive, but I think by the mid...
I'm talking about from like 69 or 70 until about 1974 or 5.
Yep. And then what happened? Urban renewal? Like what? Like they tore the place down? Why?
Oh, the places got torn down, or the people who kept the music happening either they got old,
sure,
stopped playing, or they died, or and so a lot of the scene went with them, and places would close up, and then nobody was around to like keep it going really, so it just kind of died, and it remained like a top 40 cover band kind of town,
Oh, it just, I mean, I don't need that. I just, Ed, we have a game on the.
But I remember, but I remember in the '60s, Yale had a lot of great music coming in and out of there. Whoever was programming the live concerts, they were killing it. They'd have Jim Hall and Jimi Hendrix and who else did I see? Charles Lloyd.
Yes.
Jackie McLean.
Was Miles coming through?
I don't remember. I think Miles did come to Yale, but I didn't see that show. I think he did come to Yale once, like in the early 70s, but I didn't see that.
Was like Herbie's band, the M1 Dishi band, come through there?
Headhunters band. I remember seeing the Headhunters
band. Yeah. No, this was like the more. I mean, Do you
No,
remember?
I didn't see Herbie or Yale.
I mean, I can't think of talking to like a better cat than you. I mean, I'm so fascinated by, um, yeah. I mean, people plugged in, but I mean, do you remember? Was there a I remember talking to Larry Klein, the bass player who played with Freddie and Hubbard, and this is more like late 70s. They go to these jazz festivals, quote unquote jazz festivals or whatever, and then like guys like Richie Kamuka or like the serious bop purists would like hear their set, and the vibe that Larry felt was like, what the hell are you guys playing? Like, why are you moving so far away from the music, which they just felt was bebop, and they were playing more like freaking, I mean, astral projected. I mean, it was like sonically crazy universal music. It wasn't. It was a blending of everything. But do you remember? Was there a divide? I mean, clearly you could vacillate between. You could say, "Well, do I want to play acoustic tonight or electric?" But was there a divide in the jazz community about whether you were playing the real shit, quote unquote, if you were playing, with wah pedals?
No. Well, I remember. I mean, I don't know about West Coast, but I remember coming into New York. In the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about 1976, early 77. I moved to New York in like late 77, early 78. But I remember like cats were, they weren't playing Confirmation. They weren't playing. They weren't playing. I mean, they were writing their own music. They were playing stuff that had, maybe it was acoustic bass, but they'd have like some kind of funky lines, bass lines, and it was all kind of mixed up.
I love it, man.
It was like it was a mixture of styles played on acoustic instruments, and it was great, Yeah, at the jam sessions, they played tunes or whatever. But a lot of the gigs that you would go out to see, they weren't really playing tunes. They were all playing their own original stuff that had James Brown influences in it, maybe, and, Duke Ellington or Latin music. It was all kind of mixed up, and that was great. I thought it was great.
What was the first group that you were able to tap into in New York? I mean, and because of the clubs that I fantasize about, Smalls, Slugs, those clubs were gone, I think, at that time. And I just wonder about what
Smalls was still open.
Smalls was still open in '77. That is unreal.
Smalls was still open, but a lot of the places that I went to were maybe downtown, and they were like little loft spaces or bars that are no longer there anymore. But let's see, then you had the organ clubs uptown, but there hasn't really been any organ clubs in New York since, I don't know, the 80s. But let's see, who did I see? I mean, I can't remember who I saw.
Well, no, I'm talking about it was
just the whole scene. I started hanging out in the scene like in '76.
Which is like the greatest. It was an amazing year because like disco had not fully infected the music at that point. I mean, it was like what was the you mentioned Oliver Lake, but like there was like the.
But yeah.
There
was, I'm trying to remember. A lot of the names escape me.
Well,
now.
what about like the East? Was the East around?
The East.
Yeah, the East is where AACM used to go, and like it was like kind of like a educational center for
I've heard of it, but I don't remember going there. But I've heard of it. But there were places like I remember going regularly to a place called Barbara's, which was a club on the Lower East Side. Actually, it was like right up the street from where the Blue Note is now.
Right.
And that was a serious hang. And a lot of the guys, a lot of our heroes would go there to hang out. Like Art Blakey would go, or Woody Shaw,
Oh
or Darryl
man.
Saunders, and people like that. They'd go, and it was like a Monday night scene, and all the young cats would go to sit in, and all these guys, the older guys, the masters of the music, were in the club listening and hanging, and they would often come up on the bandstand and play as well. And it was a great scene. There was a club I think it was in Brooklyn, where the bass player who used to play with Monk had a session. What was his name? Bass player that played with Ben Riley.
Larry Gales,
Not Larry Gale.
and not Wilbur Ware.
No. Anyway,
Yeah.
there would be sessions all over New York, and lost spaces. Sam Rivers had a space. Let's see, there was so it was a scene of spaces and bars, and everybody was hanging. And,
Right.
And going back to like cats, like I said, guys weren't really like playing Charlie Parker tunes. They weren't really doing that. They were writing their own music, and they had all kinds of influences.
I mean, can you talk about the first band? I mean, did you must have moved down there because maybe you knew some cats? Did you have a band of your own that you were playing original music?
I knew. What prompted me to move to New York was I went to. I befriended Rodney Jones, who was the guitarist in Dizzy Gillespie's
Absolutely,
band. I went to Dizzy's band a couple of times back then, like 1976, 77. And I became friends with Rodney. And Rodney turned me on to a guy, his name is Bruce Johnson. And he became my guitar teacher at that time. I was hanging with Bruce and go to Bruce's house, and a lot of cats would show up there to hang, and Charles Tolliver or Marcus Miller was over there once, twice. People like that would come and hang and jam, and so I said, yeah, I want to try and get with this as often as possible. So I made the plan to come to New York and to live. So that's kind of what prompted me to move to New York, was to hang with Bruce and meet all these musicians that were coming in and out of his place, and go hang with them and network. And
I'm not familiar. Was he just primarily a teacher, was he a serious bandstand cat too?
No, he didn't. He hardly played out at all. He had a lot of students.
I mean, that's the thing, is like the crisis now, Ed, this is very interesting because, and I'm not speaking about this insane community that was still pretty vibrant in '76. I mean, now in any musical circuit, I mean, if you're going to, there's no record industry, you're not going to get paid for intellectual property. So the only way you can really make any money today is by road dogging it and then selling merchandise at your table as a musician. That's kind of how you get ahead. So, I know you were taking lessons and you had already started. Like, what was your stable gigs that allowed you to sing for your supper?
Well, I had a day job.
Exactly. No, that's right. Jerry Jamad, Gordon Edwards, they all worked for the post office. Yeah.
When I first moved to New York, I was a messenger. I worked for a messenger service.
Right.
And the rents were low enough then where that could pay your rent. And I did the messenger service, and then about a year later, I got the gig with Dizzy. But during that time with the messenger service, do the day job, and then go hang out at night, network. meet cats, and go to jam sessions, and go hear guys, do gigs, little gigs anywhere, just to play.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. No, I mean, did you go to the Tin Palace at all?
Tin Palace, yeah, that was a great place.
Yeah, that was I remember. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of records recorded. They said it was it was like 10. It's amazing how much it changed, fundamentally.
Tin Palace was a great place. They used to go see Henry Threadgill there. He had his trio, Air.
Pharaoh would play there, I think.
Pharaoh Saunders, and he had a guitar player named C.G. Munoz. Great guitar player.
Tasiji is my spirit teacher. We're very dear friends. I love Tasiji very much. I can't.
Well, he was playing with Pharaoh then.
What was he like at that? Because I mean, dude, he is. I mean, you plug him in. Oh my god! It's unreal.
I've been a fan ever since I first heard it. Yeah.
I love it, man. I love this stuff. I mean, because that was universal love music, man. Like that was to the heavens.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know him. I mean, I said hello. I like what you do, but I didn't get to know him or hang out with him or anything like that. But I've been a fan, since 1977. I think it was 77, 78, something like that, when I first heard him.
Well,
he's one of my heroes.
Well, he's up in Wallkill, and I talk to him once in a while. I've gone to his place several times. He's a healer. I mean, he could have gone in and signed a record deal with Phil Ramone, and he just said, you know what? Because one of his students is Paul Schaefer from the Letterman show.
Right.
And,
right.
At a certain point, Schaefer hooked him up with Phil Ramone or, one of these guys, and they were offering him $1 million record contract or something. And Tasji's like, I don't want to. I'm a teacher. I want to stay. He turned it down, man. And and he has given me an eternal, endless well of spirit. And that, well, we can save that question. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I'm going to put this in for you right now. Take a listen to it. Pay attention to the content, and we'll come back and break it down.
But on that session, I had met Dizzy before. I used to see him all the time in San Francisco because he used to hang out at the clubs. So he knew me. He just and he finally heard me playing at the Monterey Jazz Festival. He says, I'm going to call you someday. And I said, yeah, all right, okay. Yeah. But I gave him the number.
Yeah, he did, though.
And one day, the phone rang, and I wasn't there, and I got the message that somebody called. I think his name is Dizzy, but he didn't leave a number. So I called the record company. I knew he was with Pablo. And Norman Grant said, yeah, that was Dizzy. He says, look, we're waiting for you. Catch a plane on down to L.A. And I called a plane. I got there, and they were in the studio. And Dizzy says, it was Al Gaffa. Well, you have the album. Al Gaffa, Mickey Roker.
Earl May on bass.
Earl May, yeah, which was different.
Roger Glenn.
Roger Glenn, yeah.
Doug, I seriously, if I need to mellow out, if it's been a hard day, I can just throw on a linga, and you are naturally forced. Doesn't make a lot of sense. You naturally have to slow down because it's so drawn out and it's so beautiful the way it's.
Oh yeah, it would. And Dizzy says, I says, well, what do I do? He says, you'll hear it. And we went through a tune, and he's another one. And I says, I didn't get that. He says, oh, you'll hear it.
You'll hear it. Don't worry, dude.
We're going through all this stuff, and I says, oh, I think I got it, boy. When we do it again, I'm going to nail it. And I heard Norman Grant say, oh, that's a rap, Dizzy. I said, a rap? I thought we were rehearsing.
Mr. Cherry, you want to take a guess at who that is?
That's Michael Howell.
You're darn right. And since we connected and we've been trying to put this together, I've just been blown away. And when I talk to you about the spiritual component of my show, I mean, I never thought I'd ever be able to contact Michael Howell. And when my show started 10 years ago, somehow I found him, and he was a little bit reticent to come on the show, but we did an interview.
Yeah.
And then you realize it's like the Socratic method. You must know what you don't know, and I literally found. There was this album from '75 called Olinga on Pablo, and you were not yet even in New York City at that point, and then you met Dizzy a year later, and then I find this album on Pablo, double album signed by Dizzy, signed, okay, and it is the most, and I never thought I'd find a version of Olinga that came close to the one that Michael was talking about.
That's the one with Al Gaffer and Michael on it. Two guitars.
They play on different tracks, but that the version of Olinga. I mean, Roger Glenn plays this haunting flute solo. Michael's on, but anyway, I find this double album, and my daughters and I, they were so geeked up because I was like, I'm interviewing the guitar player on this album. It is when the Brother King and also Olinga, it was like, dude, I was like, this is, and Michael's playing bass, and who's playing guitar but Ed Cherry, and it's freaking burning, man. And Dizzy's like, he announces everybody in the band, and then he's like, bye, and then some guy's like, Dizzy, it's like, it is so, to me, that's America. That's music. I know you weren't playing in the States at that concert, but I just want you to know how magical your playing is. Your solo on Olinga is awesome. And I just wonder about, how loose, I guess just because when we leave this planet long after we're gone, when I talk about Dizzy or Milt Jackson or James Moody, what made these guys? They're masters of the music, so they've mastered their instrument, they found their own individual sound, they have their own persona. But from a player's point of view, the fact that you were a young gun coming up, had a chance, you could finally sing for yourself or doing what you love to do. But as far as those guys, the vibe, what was their vibe? Because, I remember Emil Richards telling me that Milt Jackson had like he had a beat up vibraphone kit, but yet he could get the baddest sound out of that thing. These guys were like shamans, but that word gets thrown around a lot, and I'd love to hear it from you about what the essence was.
The guys that were on the scene when Charlie Parker was alive and played with Charlie Parker, they had this confidence. They oozed confidence, but they had definitely had a sound in their instruments. Just the way that they carried themselves, they were super hip, and they played super hip, and they knew about the blues.
Yes.
And they were just masters of sound and their essence. They were characters. They were the masters of the sound of the instrument, and they were creative guys. They just I don't know. It's great to be around people like that. Not just musicians, but anybody. Anybody who's a creative person, you'd like to be around them.
How did you? So wait, did Dizzy was like, hey, Dizzy's like, I'm gonna call. Did he do that with you? He said, I'm gonna call you, Ed. How did you meet him?
Well, I said before that I used to go see Dizzy and play whenever he was in New York, and I'd go backstage to hang with Rodney and the rest of the guys in the band. And then Rodney at one point decided to, leave the group, and he recommended me. And then when I showed up for the little rehearsal, Dizzy recognized me. He says, "Oh yeah, I know you."
I love it.
So yeah, so and then he said, "Okay, we got a gig next week. We're leaving, blah blah blah." And I didn't expect to be in the band, very long, but I appreciated the opportunity. But it turned out that I stayed in his band for like, 10, 15 years. But I really didn't expect it to last that long, but it did, and I'm grateful, But yeah, I just, a lot of these gigs, they're recommendations, from guys who are already in the band, or friends of the band leader would recommend somebody, So that's how I got the gig.
You talk a little bit about like the rehearsal. A lot of today, younger generations, my generation and younger, they can perseverate on rehearsal. They can rehearse so much that they suck all the soul out of it. I guess this is more about rehearsing to go into the studio to cut an album. But I'm just saying, like, I look at rehearsal as a dirty word, and I just wonder if Dizzy kind of. I'd love to know the methodology of a Dizzy Gillespie rehearsal, especially for you who just showed up taking Rodney's place, and like, because when I listen to like that version of Olinga, it's so simple, but it's not simple. It's like the deepest freaking groove. It doesn't sound like there's no micromanaging. Everybody is, and it's like what you're talking about when you're on the stage with Milt Jackson, Moody, and Dizzy. I mean, you can just feel that essence coming through the record, man. And Michael Howell's playing the funkiest bass I've ever heard in my life. I cannot believe he was playing bass on that album. But that was a live show. I mean, did he give you kind of a sketch of the tune? Or just, because like, I mean, when he was with Michael in the studio, he just said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll hear it." And so what was a Dizzy Gillespie rehearsal like?
I could count the rehearsals on one hand.
Yes.
Especially with the small group. He might take 10 or 15 minutes out of a sound check to run over a section of a tune that he might want to rework. Change the harmony or change the drum pattern or something like that. And he was very clear about what he was hearing, and he could explain it clearly, and a lot of the stuff that he changed was rhythm patterns, so he could explain it to the drummer. He could sing it, but the rehearsals, there really weren't many rehearsals except maybe for a big band tour or something like that. Yeah, you got to rehearse that. Or Dizzy had a band called the United Nations Band, like Latin music, and so yeah, there was rehearsals for that. But for the most part, with the small group, there were no rehearsals. He would have everybody gather around the piano, for 5 or 10 minutes and play some changes or whatever, and you write it down and you try to memorize it, and you go play it on the gig, and that was it.
Oh, I love this. Ed Cherry, man, what an so does it feel like a dream?
Did it?
I mean, yeah. I mean, when I hear the music, every time I hear Dizzy's music,
the first gig that I played, that was like a dream. That was like I couldn't believe that I was there, because there was not only was it Dizzy, but it was Mickey Roker playing drums.
Dude, oh my God, dude, this is Rokes. Who was on bass? Was it Earl May or was Michael playing bass?
Ben Brown.
I'm not hip to that
Brown.
cat. Who is Ben Brown?
Yeah,
I love these guys. The drummer, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Ben Brown, Dizzy got him out of Buddy Rich's band. I think.
Wow.
Ben was playing with Buddy Rich, I think, and then Dizzy hired him. But that first gig, it's like I couldn't believe I was on stage, with Dizzy playing all that stuff, and John Faddis was on that first gig.
Wow.
And Mickey Roker, Mickey was like the strongest drummer I'd ever played with up to that point,
Dude, Mickey Roker is, I mean, he doesn't get mentioned with Max and with Tony Williams and with
No.
but man, dude, I'm Mickey is like the most fiery, inspirational, sickest swing drummer I've ever heard in my life, dude. He's insane.
Yeah. You know, and he could sing. You know, he was a great musician. You know, but yeah, that was a dream. That was like a dream down in there. That first gig, I had to pinch myself.
Do you ever? I mean, I'd love you to just, you know, I don't. None of these questions I have you know definitive answers. It's just more your opinions. It's just like, you know, I remember I went down to Loganville, Georgia, and did a Facebook Live interview with Jimmy Heath, and you know, he would talk about Jimmy Carter sending, you know, guys like him and Dizzy and Jimmy Owens and people like that on State Department tours to Dakar, Senegal. You might have even gone to Dakar. I don't even know, but it's like, I mean, the point is that like he'd want to send all these amazing musicians who created this American art form known as jazz around the world to promote how proud they were and sort of show off how great this music is that's now become a world music. But then when the musicians would come home, what's happening there? It's like this hypocrisy of, look how we're going to show the world this amazing art form, but we're not going to support it when we get when the cats come back. And I just wonder, like, in your mind, not that, you know, okay, there were gigs and there were loft scenes and, you know, there were some amazing record producers and labels that, thank God, allowed, you know, like Orrin Keep News was like, you know, Michael Howell's like a jewel, like, let's make a couple albums like with him, you know, like but why has this country never fully embraced the only American art form, which is an African American art form, which is known as jazz?
That's a deep question.
I know.
But, you know, I can't really answer that.
Well, what's your opinion, though? I mean, there's no right or wrong.
The way it's been set up, you know, the arts has been less in the government's eye, you know, and black people have been left in the government structure's eye. So, you know, they're not gonna promote that. You know, they're not. I mean, up to this point, and I haven't seen it. You know, there have been, you know, some handouts along the way, but you know, as part of the structure of the way people live, you know, like in Europe, you know, I know in Paris, you know, you can get a stipend if you're a musician, but you can't get that here.
Right.
You know, you can get a stipend in Holland, but you can't get that here. You know, I mean, I can't answer that. I don't.
Well, I mean, let me ask you a question.
Shame.
I mean,
it's a shame that it's happening, but
well, it's not just happening; it's been happening for decades. Even during when jazz was actually still kind of a commercial music. I mean, it was insulting for guys to go to, you know, to promote this stuff and then come home, and then there was just, you know what I mean? I just found an album.
Then you have to starve.
Right, exactly. Starve to death. I mean, it's just like I guess that's the issue is, yeah, we don't know the exact reason, but I do look at it and I say, okay, if in Europe, there's still racism in Europe, but it's not as what it is here. You know, I look at it and I say, I just found a record.
But as far as I know, the musicians are taken care of.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. So all the clubs, the jazz clubs in Europe are subsidized because they won't fold. Yeah. Like during the pandemic, they were all being subsidized. That doesn't happen here. Musicians get a stipend. Right. So I think that it comes down to and as a musician, Ed, I just wanted you to talk about, you know, because clearly you've been able to sort of drink that, you know, that magical wine on stage with so many masters. So you've lived a magical life, but at the same time, do you believe that there was ever a period of time in this country Well, actually, I know there was, but do we in this culture in America, like why have we why is a musician's the role is a musician's gift to the world? Music is a musician's gift to the world, as opposed to a viable profession. At one time, it was definitely considered. I mean, when TV studios were first coming in the 50s, dude, there was no hipper job than being a studio musician. And then you could play live at night. You were getting ahead. And it was a pretty hip profession. And now, especially with my generation, it's like, oh, you can pay to play, or you can play for the door. You know, do you still why have we looked at music as a musician's gift to the world and not a viable profession in this country?
Wow. Let's see. Well,
I'm not talking about Steve Miller going on or Tower of Power or Journey, making millions of dollars, playing regurgitated hits from 40 years ago. I'm talking about like the idea of authentic, original expression on the bandstand and being paid for it. That to me is like, and I pray that somehow there's an enlightenment coming out of the pandemic. But at one time, it was not. I mean, it was a pretty hip.
Yeah, well, that's always been the case, I think, hasn't it? I mean, it's always been a scuffle to be a musician.
I agree.
Changed.
I agree. I mean, yeah, I agree.
It's still a scuffle. It's always been. As far as I know, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. If the government's not going to support you with a stipend, you got to do what you got to do. You have to, teach or play some music that maybe you don't want to play, but it's paying. Or if you're talented with a pen, you can write arrangements, or something like that. But you can't. We've never been able to really count on our system of government to carry us, except maybe for a chosen few who get these awards every year or every 5 years or whatever it is. But for the regular cats, it's a scuffle. You got to work a day job. You got to do something to support yourself. I can't sit around and say, the government fucked me. So,
No, totally. No, dude. I mean, you have to see it survive. Totally.
You have to survive, and you have to use your creative streak to go into survival mode. You have to do what you have to do to make some money.
Hopefully
it's legal.
And yeah, I mean, you know what, man? Like, can you talk about how you've, I know that when I first reached out to you, you went into the hospital, and thank God you're okay. And it's like a very scary, unpredictable time. But how have you kept your creative streak intact throughout the pandemic? Not just when you recently got sick, but I mean, how have you, not so much about how you support, because there's no gigs per se, but how have you kept your creativity and your spirit alive?
Well, I just gotta, stay active. Just kind of stay in touch with your friends. I like to, exercise with fresh air. There's many different things to do. Read, practice. Although since I got sick, my energy level has been really low, so my practice has been less for the last month or so. But yeah, staying in touch with your instrument. You just have to get through it best you can. Stay in touch with your friends, family, exercise. Keep a clear head. And I've been able to get a couple of little gigs here and there, and some stipends from jazz foundations and groups like that to help out. So, you just have to stay positive. You have to stay positive.
Absolutely. How much before the pandemic, were you in a position where you could, I mean, because you're right. I mean, there were, let's face it. I mean, even guys that lived and died with playing jazz, they would have to take gigs with R&B bands, Motown, or soul gigs, just because they paid the money. That was prevalent at one time. Before the pandemic, were you kind of able to pick and choose the gigs you wanted to? How often were you playing?
Yeah, I was playing a lot. Most of the gigs I was doing were my gigs.
And so you have what was it like? What kind of band did you have? What kind of band did you have?
They were all trios.
Beautiful.
Prefer playing the trios, organ trios, piano, bass, guitar trios.
I love it, dude. No bass. Wait, piano, piano, guitar.
Piano, bass, and guitar. No drums.
No drums, dude. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so hip.
But before the pandemic, I was working quite a bit and going to Europe maybe 2-3 times a year, 4 times a year. For little tours and master classes and things like that. I was fairly busy, and then just stopped. Pandemic, boom, everything shuts down. So you have to work the system to get some money. With the unemployment and all the grants that were available to the musicians early on. I took advantage of all of that. Then about July, August, little gigs started coming in, the restaurants and things like that. It was just great to play. Whatever came through at that time, I took it.
Sure.
It was great to play in front of people and not in front of a computer screen.
Is there anything that, what has changed most about you've always been sort of just by talking to you, you're not somebody who's, out there projecting or trying to control, and you've never considered yourself like a victim or like a lot of grievance or anything. But fundamentally in your consciousness, what has changed the most about, is there anything that you will never take for granted again, especially musically if and when we can come out of this thing and there's actually something remotely similar to what we used to experience as communal spiritual music?
I would never take a gig for granted.
So it's fair to say that that you did before a little, not every time, but there were times where you just
not every time.
Yeah.
Of course, there would be gigs you say, "Damn, I wish I didn't have to do this."
Right. Right. Never again. Never again.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
And I think if anybody says they haven't, they're lying.
That's right.
But just the chance to play for a live audience, I'll never take that for granted. Just to be alive.
Well, that's the most important thing. My goal is to make sure that, where are you in your recovery? Are you out? Did you actually have COVID, or did you get out? What actually happened?
Well, I'm still being tested for that. I was in the hospital for about 6 days, and my COVID tests were negative, but so they're still testing it. They think it's probably some form of pneumonia, some weird strain of pneumonia, and I'm still dealing with it, but it's not as bad as it was. But, I'm grateful to be alive.
No, I'm really great. Dude, we got to do a whole second set, man. We got a lot more to get to. As we wrap up set one here with Ed Cherry, the only time that, the only cat that has really, that I've interviewed that had a great relationship musical with this cat, with Henry Threadgill, was Ahmad Jamal, and Henry I think he lived in India for a while. I mean, can you talk about how you met Henry?
Henry?
Yeah.
How did I meet Henry? I mean, I met Henry long before I played with him.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, hanging out on the scene. We had mutual friends. But yeah, I forget how I actually ended up playing with Henry. But that was a great one of the high points in my career as well. Playing with Henry, he was a great musician, great musician. Great writer, great guy. He knew how to rehearse a band, long rehearsals, because the music was intricate and difficult. So the rehearsals were long, and the band was prepared when we went on a gig. Henry is just a great guy. He's a great guy. Is a great guy.
He's still with us. Is that right?
I haven't seen him lately, but he would come to my gigs occasionally, just to say hello. But yeah, I loved playing with Henry. He had an odd band, with 2 guitars and 2 tubas, a French horn, and trap drums.
Whoa, dude! Whoa! That is wildness, dude.
Yeah. We recorded. I recorded 2 CDs with him. I think it was 2.
Yeah, no, I'm looking. Song Out of My Trees and Making a Move. So I was going to say you had 2 guitars, so you guys could kind of vacillate. Like one of you could play rhythm, the other could play lead. What kind of roles?
We there was really no rhythm lead thing going on there. We both had lines to play.
Right.
Like Henry would write the music where, the lines would, we'd either be playing harmony or some kind of counterpoint or whatever. There was no rhythm guitar player, lead guitar player. We both did the same thing, playing these written lines, and the solo, whenever. It wasn't as strict a setup like the usual band. But yeah, it was interesting. 2 guitars, 2 tubas. And
2 tubas. I mean, what is the need for 2 tubas? I mean, that is insane.
It's a big sound.
Ed, can we do set 2 in the near future? I'd love to do another part with you, man. My mission is to make sure that. Part of my dream is to. I live in Tucson, but I grew up in Long Island and Stony Brook. One of my dreams is to come back and see you and Michael Howell play an acoustic duo together. Michael. Do you still talk to Michael?
I've thought about occasionally.
I love the fact that that album with Dizzy, man. Like I will listen to that every day for the rest of my life, man. That Olinga version with him on bass, you playing guitar. It's so. I mean, Milt. I don't know how Milt passed away pretty soon after that, right? He didn't. That was like such an iconic. That was and where was that show from? Was from Africa or where was it from?
I don't remember. I know we did a recording in Montreux.
Yeah, Montreux. That's what it was. 80s. Montreux. Oh my god! I look at this. It's the best. I mean, it's probably out of any jazz album from the '80s. It's one of the. I mean, it's live, so that's why it's so amazing.
Yeah, with Milt Jackson, and Moody, James Moody.
Oh my god!
Right?
It's so cool because at the end, you guys. I mean, the whole crowd is singing along, and that it's so amazing. Like the collective consciousness, I would have walked out of there completely with a new frame of reference in life. And then Dizzy's announcing the whole band, and he walks off the stage, and somebody else was like, maybe Milt was like, "That's Dizzy." I'm like, these guys, this was America. This is I'm not. I don't do this for preservation. I'm not my parents were librarians. I do this show for promotion so that younger cats can one day be like, Ed Cherry, this album. Oh, I'm going to investigate this. Do a deep dive into it because I really believe that everything is cyclical in life, and we haven't really had a growth in musical vocabulary in a long time. A lot of that has to do with technology, and a lot of that has to do with post-production of albums, and a lot of it has to do with people now learning, going to the academy, going into debt, and there's no guarantee there are jobs in the back. There's just a myriad of issues, and I just feel like you are such a perfect cat to talk to because, you were alive and aware when New Haven was still thriving to a degree. That you still had that old guard, and that's the most amazing thing about.
Oh, yeah.
And that the thing is that it was like Cannon, Train, Sonny, Alan Toussaint, Charlie Neville. All these guys walked the bar. They all played R&B before they played bebop.
Right.
That's the thing. That's why you just play straight bebop. It sounds kind of sterile. But those cats all had blues. The blues was right there.
Yeah.
So it's so funky.
Yeah, they would play what they wanted to play, but they would also play what the people wanted to hear. They would play like the popular R&B tunes of the day, but kind of jazz them up, and then they'd play, bop tunes and the blues, dance. They were entertaining. They were entertaining to listen to, and yet they kept their integrity because they were playing, real shit.
Oh my dude! And you were touched by all that. It's so beautiful. What would you? Before I let you go, what would you tell younger? Because the other issue is that we are saturated with visual material, where you guys primarily were a lot of autodidacts, or you had to listen to stuff, you couldn't rewind it, you had to hear it one time, and you kind of make up your own thing. And now with YouTube, everything's visual. A lot of it's very mediocre, and in my mind, when I listen to melodic improvisation or jazz, there's just a homogenization of sound. I can't tell who anybody is. Like even with your playing, like I can. Now that I heard you, I'm like, next time I'm like, oh, I can. That's Ed Cherry. Like you can hear who somebody is. So in this paradigm, with students that you may or may not work with, what would be your advice to cats to develop their own? Because it's so much easier to comp now. You want to sound like somebody else, but that was not what the masters were about. The masters would have slit their wrists if you were like, oh yeah, you sounded just like so and so. So what's your advice for cats who really are seeking their own individual voice?
Well, you do have to copy. I think everybody copies. I mean,
absolutely.
Dizzy copied, Louis Armstrong and Roy Eldridge, But then at some point, he developed his own voice. It just happened. Maybe it's maturity. Comes with age. Maturity. But you really have to copy the masters and then leave them alone and come up with your own voice. It just comes from working a lot, playing in front of people. I think that's a big training school there. It's like working in front of an audience, but that's not going to happen now. But I mean, back in the day when I was coming up, that was like the best school, playing in front of an audience.
Why? Because you had to be completely in the moment. You had to be completely in the moment.
You had to be. You had to be in the moment, and you had to entertain your audience.
Yes. Yes.
You can't just play for the other musicians in the room. You have to play for the people.
Right, and somehow it was like the entertainment factor was a lot more sophisticated than just playing like ridiculous licks and chops and technique. It was like there was a humor aspect. There was humor in the music, and the rhythms were different. Like today, people say, "Oh, I have to entertain, so I'm just going to play everything I know and just be basically wanking it up there." It was still very tasteful. I mean, entertainment back then was a little bit not as superficial as it is today.
But to get in your own voice, I mean, it's hard. It's difficult to say, you know, you have to do this, this, and this. I think it just comes from over time, you know, maturity and how you're hearing yourself. You know, at some point you have to say, well, okay, I'm tired of sounding like whoever the, you know, hot guy of the day is. You know, okay, I'm going to leave that alone now and try to play something different.
I love it. I freaking love it. That's hard.
It's difficult for me to say how you would come into that, other than just by playing a lot in front of an audience, maturity, you know, and you know, as we get older, you know, it just happens. Just one day, it's like a light switch comes on, and you start sounding like yourself. You know, especially with guitar players today. You know, using a lot of effects and pedals. One way to come out of that is to find yourself is to do some gigs without those pedals. You know.
Absolutely.
You know, like a lot of guys use delay and all these different kinds of pedals. Do some gigs without those and see what happens. You know, that's for a guitar player. I'm speaking of, you know, electric guitar. Do some gigs without the pedals. You know.
Would you say you begged, borrowed, and stole from guys like Grant Green and Wes and Kenny, and then
Sure.
and sort of went off on your own at a certain point? You wanted to hear yourself.
Yeah. But you know, it wasn't. For me, it wasn't a conscious decision.
Mm-hmm.
To say, well, I'm, you know, it just kind of happened. You know, just over time, it just kind of happened. Where, you know, people say, you know, I have a sound. People will tell you, you know, you got a great sound. You know, yeah, I like the way you play. You know,
great tone. Yeah.
Then you know you're on the right path. When a non-musician comes up and says, "Yeah, I like what you do. I like the way you sound," you know, that's a compliment. You know.
Well, I'm praying. I'm hoping that we can get a Cherry Howell acoustic duo gig, you know, in the near future. I'd love I could go to my grave in peace after that, dude. And I just really, I mean, it's just an honor to connect with you, man. I want you to keep getting on the healing road, and let's set up a time to do part 2, man. It's you know, that I'm just all I know how to do. Yeah.
I'll be around.
Yeah, take care. We'll do it again, man. It was I had a ball, man. Thank you so much, brother.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, take care, bro.
All right.
Later.
All right.
Peace. Bye. Well, beautiful, timeless cat, Ed Cherry, dropping knowledge for all the younger cats who are hopefully will one day, if not tomorrow, create a new renaissance in music that